This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Welcome, everyone, to a live podcast recording of Somewhere in the Skies. I am your host, Ryan Sprague, and this is going to be fun. I thought, you know what? If we're going to do podcast recordings, why not try to do them live so that you, the live audience, can be a part of these interviews? We do have some listener questions for our very special guest tonight that came in from you guys, and we're also going to be taking live listener questions as well. Um, and let's not waste any more time with who that special guest is. He really needs no introduction if you know anything about the UFO field, but I'll give him a little bit of an intro. Uh, Earl Grey Anderson, one of the most prolific MUFON field investigators I personally know. I had the honor of meeting him at a Alien Con event out in Los Angeles. He was an on-site correspondent for Somewhere in the Skies at the MUFON Symposium in the past. So we're going to talk about everything with him today, from his favorite MUFON field investigations to his own personal experiences, how he got interested in UFOs to begin with, the very popular and cryptic story of his mother and her connection to all of this as well, and so much more. We're going to talk about the recent MUFON Symposium. And yeah, we're going to really hit the ground running, guys. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him in. It is the one, the only Earl Grey Anderson. Welcome, brother.
Hey there, Ryan. It's good to see you.
You
Over
too,
the
man.
ocean. You're over the
I
ocean,
know.
dude.
Isn't that
The
crazy? God
pond.
bless technology. Over the
Ryan
pond.
is
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the pond.
Over the pond. You should be
Where
speaking
are
with
you
the name
today?
Earl Grey.
Ooh, you muted yourself, I think. Oops.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. It sounds kind of echoey or something. I don't know what happened. Sounded good before.
That should be better.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there you are.
Awesome.
Technology. Yeah, oh, God. Help.
That's why we're doing this live. Yeah, everyone's getting a peek behind the curtain. So I'm in Scotland, Earl. That's where I am.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, living in Edinburgh, living it up, baby. Got my haggis, got my scotch.
Oh,
yeah.
no haggis, but I'll take the scotch. I'll go with the
Absolutely.
Scotch egg. How's that?
Yum. Well,
There's
so
something,
you're
there's
in,
aversion to eating lungs, and
I totally understand,
yeah.
man. Trust me, I understand.
If you drink enough, then you won't notice that you're eating lungs when you have haggis, right? It goes hand in hand, I guess.
It's so true, man. It is so true. By the third scotch, you're like, I'll eat anything. I don't even care.
There you go.
This
Yeah.
So I guess, I know we could talk forever about haggis and scotch, but let's get to UFOs.
Yeah. Hey, look, I wore
obvious,
your shirt in honor.
Oh my gosh. I totally didn't even notice. Wow. Guys, look at that. He's even wearing one of our...
It's the one that's got the cryptid, like it's attacking New York or something. Octopoid.
That was one of my first designs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
We kind of started up in the field kind of around the same time, and we had our mutual dear friend and brother, Peter Robbins, who, that was sort of our link, our commonality. But you went this way, I went that way. But here we are, it's it's all full circle in the end, really.
I knew it would all come back together. Yep, on Somewhere in the Skies, brother. Well, let's start from the beginning, right? Where any good story starts. Your interest in UFOs. Tell us a little about how you first got interested in the topic. And I know a lot of people are going to want to hear the story about your mother, myself included. And I know you've told it before, but I would love to hear it again
It's
if you're
my
up for it.
life, you know.
Yeah,
So of
yeah.
course, and I love my mom. Now I don't know if she would be thrilled or horrified with what I'm doing with the knowledge that she imparted to me when I was 5 years old, eating my cornflakes, getting ready to go to kindergarten that day. But that really is okay. For some reason, I would seem to have been born with this propensity for UFOs and the phenomenology and everything around it. My earliest memories are like climbing up the monkey bars in our backyard and waving and singing at the sky. And I remember my mom opening up the kitchen window and going, "Who are you waving and singing to, Earl?" Yeah. And I told her, I said, "I'm waving and singing to the space people, Mom. It's the space people." Yeah, I don't know why I knew that there were space people that were out there, and what possessed me to wave and sing to them. But here I am. I'm in my mid-60s now. Don't tell anybody. And I'm still waving and singing to the space people. I mean, it seems to be a habitual thing. Now, maybe it was that my mom noticed that I found my comfort in like taking like the Time Life books and turning them to pictures of the solar system and the early Redstone rocketry programs. And, I'd sort of make my little safety fort and play army men or whatever in there. But for some reason in 1963, I was having my cornflakes and Mom sat down opposite of me in our cheery little yellow painted kitchen in Venice, California. Now, we all knew that my mom had been one of Howard Hughes's personal secretaries. That wasn't news. That was kind of her bragging point with family and friends and such. In fact, my old next door neighbor from 1963, I'm in touch with her and she remembers all these stories, that my mom told back then, which is kind of nice that there's somebody else that remembers this. It's not family. Yeah. But anyway, she sat down and she said, "Son, so, I know that you have this interest in outer space and you talk about the space people. And I just wanted you to know, that my job for Hughes had a weird thing to it." And she started talking. She said that they took me out to the middle of the Great American Desert. They didn't tell me where I was going. They didn't tell me what they were going to show me. There was no preamble to this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they flew her out there or drove her in one of those buses with the blackened out windows. She didn't go there. But she said that they took her to the middle of nowhere and there was this concrete shack, a bunker. She said it was real low slung to the ground. And she wondered why they took her out to the middle of nowhere to look at tools or tractor. She didn't know. Well, they opened this thing up and there was an elevator. That was the only thing that was in this room. And she said that she knew it wasn't going up. There wasn't an upstairs floor, So she figured that maybe it would be a level or two down. But when the elevator started moving, she said it moved at quite a clip. That was the term she used to her 5-year-old kid. It seemed like she was talking to another adult. She said that I was scared because it was really moving fast and it kept going down and I felt butterflies in my stomach, which, she was feeling vertiginous, apparently. It was very deep under the desert. She said the doors opened up and there was a little city, a bustling city down under the desert. She said that there were lots of scientists there that were working on top secret projects. Later on, she would mention Werner von Braun. Disney would come on, and this was, at the beginning of the American space program and the moon launches. So they would bring Werner von Braun to explain a staged rocket, which was his baby. He designed that thing. And she said, I used to work with Werner. He's a friend, a very sweet man. And she said he would call me Betty Grace, which was my mom's first name and her middle name. Well, here's a picture of my mom, actually, from back at that point. So we're talking about 1953.
Oh, she's
When
beautiful.
my mom was a looker. And she said that they got around in little golf carts, and that that people lived down under the desert for long periods of time. She said that they had little cafes under there. That one had yellow umbrellas over the tables, like a French cafe. And she laughed. She said, "You don't need an umbrella in a cave," but I guess they were trying to make people feel at home. She said that there was a guy down there that she said they had a barber shop, and the barber could do my hair for me. And it didn't really strike me when she told me the story as a little kid, but as I got older, I was thinking, you don't really go under the desert to get your hair done. She must have spent some time down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, she said, she told me this crazy story. And then she said, the way she sort of bookended it was, she said, well, son, you're waving and singing to the space people and all this stuff. She said, I just want you to know that we are not alone in the universe, that we've already, and UFOs you're going to hear about and all that stuff is true, son. So, well, now it's time for you to go to school. So finish up your cornflakes and let's go. and yeah, exactly. I mean, can you imagine? And now a 5-year-old, you have kind of this sort of magical realism look at the world at that point. As far as I knew, everybody else's mom and dad worked in little cities under the desert. I mean, she knew. She wasn't supposed to tell me the story, and
Right.
later on, it came back to kind of bite us both in the ass a little bit. When I was 8 years old, 10 years old, I was in 4th grade. It was 1968. And we had the open classroom type thing that they were trying back in the 60s. Very good teacher, Mrs. Russell, right? Had us make films and stuff like that as assignments. So, but it was Friday, it was show and tell, and it was what do your parents do? So I talked about my dad's landscaping contractor business. And it was like yawn fest. So I'm gonna go back to my desk, and then something possessed me. I said, but let me tell you about my mother and what my mother's old job was. And I just told them what I told you. Yeah. And so kids would do like this show, My Favorite Martian, was real popular. He had 2 little antennae that would come up behind his head, So the kids were doing that to me and going, Space Earl, Space Earl. And so I think the teacher was confused. And I believe, when I went up there, I told the story like I told you. It was what I knew. So she called my mom in for a parent-teacher conference. And I'm playing on the monkey bars, in the little recess area, probably waving and singing to the space people again. And my mom comes out from her conference, and she looks kind of stern. And she's silent. We walk to the car, and she opens up my door in the station wagon and says, son, I'm not mad at you. And at that point, I'm, uh-oh. Yeah, what did I do? I didn't fight anybody recently. What's going on? So she gets in the car and she said, son, now you didn't know better, and I didn't tell you couldn't share that story. And then she looks at me and she goes, my God, how did you remember that? You were just a baby. And then she said, son, what I told you about the city under the desert and UFOs, that was all true. I didn't lie to you, and you didn't lie to your class. But I had to tell your teacher that you have a very good imagination. And she's trying to drive at this point. It's just a mile away, but she's very upset. And she says, son, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. I signed things that said that I would never speak about it. It was illegal for me to do that. But you were just little. I didn't think you'd remember or even understand. She said, son, people do not know about little cities under the desert, and they certainly don't know about about aliens. I forget what word she used. Space people, maybe she said, and UFOs. They don't know about that. It's top secret stuff, and you can't ever talk about it because I could get into horrible trouble. And then she looks at me again and she said, I could go to prison if you talk about it. So I didn't talk about it anymore. And I noticed, I used to check out the couple of UFO books that were in the school library. They had, Hynek, and they had the Kehoe book, and I think a little omnibus that maybe had some of the contactee stuff in it. Well, they stripped those from the school library. They're suddenly gone, which is a bad thing. Okay, you guys, don't ban books. All right, you want to keep books there for kids to read and expand their minds and make up their own decisions about things. But anyhow, as years went by, every now and then there would be a conversation that I would accidentally on purpose listen to. My mom, I guess that her sister knew about her previous employment and what she did. And she brought like the Look magazine with the Betty and Barney Hill story in it. And there was this argument, and I'm with my cousins and we're listening to her, and my mom was doubling down on, I think this really happened, Mary. From what I know, this sounds very, very much like what's going on out there. In my aunt, she says, but they stuck a needle in her navel. And I had to bump my older cousin's, ribs. And it's like, what's a navel? He said, it's a belly button, stupid. Shh. Yeah. And so, this was maybe 1966 or so when that conversation happened. And this is what I grew up hearing and just very intrigued with. Now, my mom in 1977, I took her to see Star Wars, the movie, the first one. It was like the second or third day it was out in the theater. So not a lot of people in the theater, it wasn't really known yet. Right. But we watched the film, and for some reason, my mom started talking. I was 19 years old, I believe. It was 1977. So let me do a little math. No, I was only 17, right? 77, 58, I was born. 19. So I was 19 years old. All right. And after the film, my mom says, son, you have no idea how close to the truth this movie is. She said, all the different beings and the different spacecraft and all that, it's really like that out there. And she says, but they will never, ever tell the public. It'll never happen. They'll never tell them. And I asked her, I said, well, why the hell not? That's one of those questions. Is there a God? I mean, are we alone in the universe? And what happens after I die? Those are like the three big ones, I guess.
Right.
And she said they're afraid that people will react badly. She brought up Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast and how people had reacted. It sounded like she was repeating, sort of an answer that was given to her, like it was rehearsed or a pat answer. And boy, I'll tell you, that just lit the fuse even more for me, Ryan. Now, I get little bits and pieces from my mom as the years would go by. Usually she would, sort of roll her eyeballs, turn around and walk out of the room if I'd ask her something. But I guess I was in my early 20s, and I asked her again, what were you guys doing under the desert, Mom? It makes me nuts. Just give me some kind of a hint. And again, she walks away. And then she comes back, though, and she had sort of a grin. She said, I'll tell you something. You were down there, too. What? She said, I was pregnant with you. I worked there up until like the week that you were born. That's when I, retired from my job. But you were down there, too. So I don't know, Ryan. Maybe that's what's wrong with me, They Big Deagle in their navel and did some tweaked around, with Earl's.
Right. Now,
I don't know,
Did she, please tell me, Earl, did she come to the surface to give birth, or were you born underground? That's the real question.
No, I was born in St. John's Hospital, Santa Monica, which is
Okay,
still there. So yeah.
fair
Nope.
enough.
She
Just
came
wanted to
up.
make sure.
Came.
To say
Yeah,
you're a
me and my
true
5
countryman.
hybrid brothers, Um, but now, my mom, she went back to work eventually. She was a miserable housewife. She hated it. She hated being a housewife. She went to work for an employment agency called Manpower, and before you know it, all of her accounts, they were all these military industrial complex accounts. She had Lockheed, she had Boeing, she had uh, Douglas aircraft, and Raytheon. Uh, it was like David Grush's litany of the gatekeepers, right? Well,
Yeah.
those were her clients, and she would find people that she could place that had special gifts. Um, in fact, when the Bob Lazar story came out, I asked her about that. I said, this sounds like one of the guys that you'd get out to one of these companies, Mom. You ever hear this Bob Lazar guy? And she looked uncomfortable. She pulls her glasses down like I do. We both do that. And she said, Bob Laser, that's not a real name. And she goes back to her shorthand stuff, And that was kind of how she dealt with me. But on her deathbed, we had a little talk. She doubled down again, but she didn't give me any more details. I mean,
Mm.
it kind of, so yeah, they're space people, but what do they look like? What are their intentions? Where did they come from? No, she wouldn't tell me any of that stuff. I think that and later on, I had a DOD guy speak with me a couple of years back. And he told me, he said, Earl, I've read your mother's file. I went, oh, she's got a file? Oh, tell me, And he said, well, I just want you to know your mom didn't lie to you. And you can be very proud of your mother. She was a great American. She was a patriot.
Wow.
That was nice to hear. And I asked him, well, what else can you tell me? He said, her file is sealed. It's almost 70 years now. And her file is still sealed. Go figure. When she died, 1999, I knew that the golden ticket wasn't ever coming. If she had left anything for me to find, the house burnt down shortly after my mom passed away. So if I was sort of looking around through her things, and I didn't really have a chance to find any proof of what she told me, except for her job. She was still working for Lockheed and all these different kind of the war machine. She kept the wheels rolling on that stuff.
Yeah.
That's when I joined MUFON. I mean, that's why, I started reading more literature about the phenomena, and everybody was contradicting each other. And Philip Corso, I mean, sounded like what my mom was talking about, and I would go off on something, So I decided I need to do this for myself. I need to find out for myself. I can't really trust everybody else. To do due diligence, I have to put my hand to the plow. And
Right.
MUFON was the name that kept coming up from book
So
to book. They seem to be respected. They seem to, they started doing their thing. 1969,
you're right. Right. So you joined MUFON,
and
Earl.
they're still doing it.
And they're still going. I know they're still going strong.
Yeah.
Well, I think, for those who may not be too familiar with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, a volunteer run organization with state directors and investigators in every state, all across the world at this point. Um, I think people have misconceptions on what an actual field investigator does sometimes. I'm not a MUFON investigator. I'm a relayer of stories, but you're the one out there actually interviewing these people, going to investigate these things. So could you maybe walk us through what does a sort of typical MUFON investigation look like?
Sure.
I've seen the form, but what is it like on your side of it? Yeah, maybe walk us through what a MUFON
Well, we
investigation
get
looks like.
sure. If somebody sees something in the skies, somewhere in the skies, and it doesn't look like something that's supposed to be up there. If you go to MUFON.com and you can click on report a UFO, there's another button that says report an abduction or a being. So, we have both options there. Sometimes they come together, and we'll have people fill out both of those forms. But those forms, they come to me now because I'm state director here in Southern California. So it'll come to me in my computer, email with a case number and the synopsis of the case. And right now I have 13 field investigators who are working under me. They've all been trained. I personally mentor my people. MUFON has a wonderful training program called MUFON University that Mindy Toutfest and Terry Ling Keel both kind of do together. Jim Millard does the nuts and bolts part of that. But it's really a very effective and kind of a deep learning experience. And the closest thing to a textbook that is really out there on how to become a ufologist. Our friend Peter Robbins, that joke, if you want to be a ufologist, click your heels together 3 times and twirl around, voila, you're a ufologist. But I love Peter, and I get the irony, and it's funny. But MUFON has really high standards. They want you to be trained. They want you to know the difference between a Mylar balloon, flashing the sun back like Morse code, caught in an updraft, or SpaceX. We get a lot of reports in now from the satellite train, and of course every launch here in Vandenberg, and they're sending satellites up to a higher orbit now, so we can actually see the Florida launches from California as well now.
Oh, wow.
If you're out at the right time, and it looks weird. First time I ever saw them launch a Falcon 9 rocket, I was outside of the CVS here, and I'm San Fernando Valley where I live, and there were a bunch of Hispanic people pointing up at it, going "ovni, ovni," which is UFO in Espanol,
Yep.
And I had to say, "No ovni, Elon Musk."
Oh, I love that.
So-
Earl, I think I was there for that launch. Now that you
Oh,
mentioned
really?
that, I was in Los Angeles at the time.
Cool.
And I thought the
Yeah.
world was ending, man. Like when I saw
Maybe it did. It did.
Oh, right.
This is all Matrix
Yeah.
now, Ryan. You didn't know that, right?
right, a glitch. It was crazy, man. But yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so I've got my field investigators, and they're all really wonderful. I love them. We're like family. We get together and have board game night and stuff. Cards Against Humanity. Can you imagine a bunch of UFO people doing that game?
Oh, God.
Doing whiskey shots, of course. But we're all really close, and we work together as a team. And I think that's the way that you want to be. Everybody has their gift. I have certain people that have a propensity for the experiencer cases. I made sure that they got into the experiencer resource team that Kathleen Martin began at MUFON. It was initiated by Bud Hopkins, actually. And then Kathleen and Dr. Don Donderi kind of turned that, because they saw the need for people that had contact, that they always have ontological shock afterwards, whether it's seemingly benign or malign. There's that speed bump that people hit that's a form of PTSD. And MUFON saw that these cases need more than just an investigation. You sort of have a person there who's psychologically in tatters after this happens and has so many questions. And so the way that the ERT works is that we're not social workers, but almost sort of like social workers. I have a vetted list of hypnotherapists that I can, send people or give to these people. That they're not offered by MUFON. You can imagine the legal tangle of that if we did.
Yeah.
But it's out of pocket and private, but we've done that. For instance, I send a lot of people to Yvonne Smith out here, and Deb's Bueller is another wonderful hypnotherapist. We've got hypnotherapists for almost all of the 50 states and also over the pond as well. So we will offer that to them. We'll offer there are support groups like Ciro. There's Les Velez's group that he has. Those are very helpful for people to meet other experiencers and get to speak with them. But the main thing we do is an ear, a non-judgmental ear, opposed to the way that we'll do a field investigation where you have to weigh the evidence and you have to, we get intentional hoaxes sometimes. But we found that with experiencer cases, it's different, and you have to have compassion for these people, and that's like the aspect of my job I love. But anyway, I'll give the case out, whatever it may be. It may have been something in the skies, somewhere in the skies, like a balloon or a satellite or a UFO. I mean, we get, UFO cases. Like Hynek said, 1 out of 10 UFO cases is interesting. It's sort of 9 out of 10. It's usually some prosaic object, Venus, satellite, what have you. But when you see a UFO case come in, it rings a certain little bell. You kind of get so that you sort of recognize them. And so I have a police detective, field investigator. I've got another guy who's still works as a private eye. Both are very compassionate men. No, I wouldn't have a problem giving either of them an experience. People that work in social situations where they speak with people a lot. Everybody has their gifts, and you kind of get to recognize who is good at what. So I kind of put the cases out that way, And that's really how it works. You'll go, sometimes you'll have a case that warrants feet on the ground, and you want to go out there, take theodolite photos of, so you have the exact coordinates of where an object was seen. And I get reports from pilots, commercial pilots, military. I had a whole flight crew on the way to Hawaii from Japan that saw 3 flying saucers come down into a triangular holding pattern. And I've got the date, the coordinates, and all their signatures on the flight log. I have a photograph of that flight log, by the way. A case like that, these guys have everything in the world to lose and nothing to gain by coming forward and saying that they saw flying saucers go into a triangular holding pattern and then shoot together down below the horizon line. So this is kind of how we handle the cases.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, it's a satellite, a balloon, or what have you. But that 1 out of 10, and you never know which one. I've had some surprising cases that kind of blossomed. Wow,
Well,
did that kind of explain it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, that gives me so much more clarity on how these things are given out to different investigators. So what were some of those cases? Are there any you're willing to share that have really stood out to you as being that 1 out of 10, as
Sure.
being something truly, I guess, anomalous? Are there any cases you're willing to share with us?
Yeah. Well, here's one. I just, I write an article for Outer Limits magazine, the UK UFO periodical. I've been doing it for about 5 years now. It was okayed by, MUFON's board of directors to, as long as I redact names. And, we have a great respect for the witness. We want to keep them safe. But here's one. It's case number 104944. The synopsis. The main witness was outside in the Palm Desert on vacation. This was November 12th, 2018, when 2 very large and bright lights appeared above her, shining down a spotlight, surrounding her like being caught in a spotlight. It was perfectly silent. She couldn't see an aerial vehicle, just the bright light shining down from a featureless source. The light shone down for 10 seconds, then shut off like somebody just flipped a switch. That evening, approximately 2 o'clock a.m., the witness woke up feeling exhausted. found her rings were crushed against her fingers, which required them to be removed by a jeweler. The witness has a long history of being paralyzed after a room has been flooded with blue, thick or viscous type light, which she describes as being different from normal light. The light seems to be what paralyzes me. Then entities will appear, either taking me to a featureless white room or else doing medical stuff in my own room. The witness has no memory of being taken on November 12th, 2018, but she remembers the light surrounding her during her walk, remembers waking up to find her rings painfully crushed against her finger and her clothes unbuttoned improperly. That she apparently our visitors don't know how to button up a blouse or a
No.
nightgown.
I've heard that
They
several
can't get it.
times. Yeah.
And that goes back to the Betty and Barney Hill case again. Betty,
Mhm.
they had some trouble apparently removing her garment. But that's one case out of, I mean, at this point I've got like 1,020 some cases under my belt personally that I've done. And that doesn't include all, 10 times that have gone out to my field investigators. I do take investigations still because I love it. But I used to get all the good ones. Now I'm state director, being ethical, I try to be fair, and so a case will come in and I'll go, I
Ooh, I want that
this.
one.
But this isn't Richard's neck of the woods. He lives like a mile from the witness, so I'm going to give this to my police detective. And
Wait.
Richard, he's wonderful. So that's how I do it, and I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Well, I'd love to ask you this. Now, I get emails all the time of people sending me photos, videos of UFOs, and when they give me context as to where they were, what happened, what they experienced, they have these, and this is no fault of any witness. They have this dramatic story of the craft was, cylindrical, and the light below was pulsating, and
Yeah.
I could, it was completely silent. And then, and then they're like, here's the video. And they show me the video, and it's just like a dot in the sky. And again, like, this isn't anything against them. I'm not knocking
No.
anyone who sends me things. I'm extremely appreciative that they would trust me to send me that sort of stuff. But,
get that.
for me, it's incredibly hard, Earl, to be like, I don't know what it is, but it probably was just a satellite or this or that. Or I do find a prosaic explanation. I give it to Mark D'Antonio, and he's able to analyze it and tell me what this was, and I can give that to a witness. But for you as investigators in MUFON, do you ever have those experiences where you do find an explanation and the witness is like, no, absolutely not. Like, this was an alien from Zeta Reticuli. Like, does that sort of stuff happen with you guys, and how do you deal
all
with
the
that?
time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I'm very careful with how, my people, I've really, really tried to train them to be kind and compassionate. And what I'll have my people say usually is if you know what it is, and it's unequivocally a satellite, or, you get so that when you're seeing one of, Musk's satellite trains, it's a bunch of little dots in a line, and that. But, there's no reason why you can't tell that person, I'm not perfect. I can make mistakes. And this is the best, explanation that I have for what you saw. But, I can be wrong. So keep looking up, and I'll just, make sure that they know, I'll send them like a news article about about Elon Musk's satellite, thing that he's doing. I mean, I think it's 80,000 of these things he wants to send up. And then they have to replace them every 5 years. So we're going to be having a lot of launches. And the movie Gravity, it's like the space junk that's up there now. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But this is a way that I try to handle it. You want to be kind to these people. It's difficult. There's a ridicule factor out there, and the last thing people need is to get ridicule from a field investigator from MUFON. So that's the way that I am with it, is to just tread lightly, be kind to these people. Some people really don't want to know what your final disposition was on a case. And I'll tell my field investigators, if they don't ask, don't, and it's a balloon, don't offer it up to them. Just say, thank you so much for putting in your report. If they ask, you have to be honest, but do it kindly. Be sweet about it. Don't make them feel stupid. I'll say this. I mean, I've seen a UFO. I saw a UFO close up 4 years ago. First real UFO I ever saw. And I think that I was targeted to see that. It was probably a teachable moment for me. I found that this phenomena is a personal phenomena. If you poke at it, it pokes back. You know, it's that disturbing the universe thing with quantum mechanics. You know, our intentions can actually affect an experiment, like the double slit experiment, depending on what the scientist is expecting to see, whether a particle or a wave is the way that it would appear. So we're inextricably connected to this universe, and the UFO phenomenon is as well. So it's an interactive thing. Now, when I saw my UFO, I didn't do anything that I was trained to do. I didn't take a photo. I didn't take a video. I was close enough to it that I believe that they were running the narrative. And you know, in Star Wars, that, you know, Jedi mind trick thing, these are not the droids you are looking for.
Yes.
There's something to that. Yeah. I mean, you know, the thoughts that are going through my head, this was 6:30 in the morning. It was a daytime sighting. At closest approach, I was 30 feet away from it. And I feel like I was completely in its command, even though I didn't know that. I drove right past that miracle, and about a mile out from it or two, I pulled over then, and I'm face palming, like, what the hell just happened? I must be the worst UFO investigator in the world. But I think you're going to get photos that are fuzzy and distant. All right. Those are the ones that people get where they're not affected. And that's the way that they're going to look. If you're close up to a UFO, you're probably in it. You know, I mean, they
last
don't,
thing on your mind is taking a photo or a video.
no, they don't do air shows to show off their cosmic hot rods. Their intentions, I think, are the, you know, the further, you know, evolving of the human species. So.
Right. So, Earl, if you don't mind, could you share a little bit more about that personal sighting you had? Like, what did it look
Sure.
like? How did you
It was
feel?
V-shaped. I was
Okay.
on my way to work. Now, my wife and I, 9 years ago, we had a visitation from beings, the little gray guys with the black eyes. And it surprised me more than anybody. And if somebody had told me the story, I probably wouldn't have believed them. But it happened to us, and it happened to both of us. Again, it's a personal phenomenon. I think they knew what I would be doing in the future, because here I am, you know, on TV and stuff. And I think they want me to have the correct perception of who they are. Now, 4 years ago, I was on my way to work. I was still working as a nurse, 40 years working hands-on nursing. And I saw something hanging over the schoolyard. It was on Winnetka Boulevard here where I live. The Valley, you know, gag me with a spoon, all that stuff, right? Moon Unit Zappa. But yeah, that's home. And but this thing is hanging over the schoolyard. It looked kind of boxy and not pretty. And I'm looking at it going, I wonder, I bet the students are pulling a hoax on the science teacher. You know? So I'm looking for cables that they could have hung something up with. And no, there's no cables. There's nothing this thing is tethered to. It's too huge to be a kite or to be a balloon of some kind. I mean, this was massive tonnage. It was about the size of a fighter aircraft. And when I was maybe half a mile from it, I was thinking like a ufologist. I'm wanting to take, sorry, my phone started reading. I hope you don't hear that.
Oh, no, not at all. You're good.
Sorry about that. Oh, okay. It's going through my headphones. So when I was about half a mile from it, I'm thinking like a trained ufologist. Okay, I'm going to take photos, video. I'm going to knock on doors to get eyes on this thing. Call MUFON, get STAR team members involved. You know, that they're like the rapid response team MUFON has.
Mhm.
But the closer I got to it, the less like a ufologist I acted, and the less like that I thought. Suddenly, it was the most important thing in the world to not be late to work. And I didn't like that job. I was always looking for excuses to be late to work. But for some reason, this UFO was irritating me.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking it's an ugly UFO. It doesn't have lights on it. It's boxy looking. It doesn't look aerodynamic in the slightest. But here is massive tonnage hanging there over a schoolyard 40 feet off the ground. And now sounds outside of my car became very quiet, unnaturally so. Time seemed sort of slowed down somehow. It was the Oz effect, you know. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, that's what and it's named the Oz effect because it's this magical, strange thing, like when Dorothy opens up the door and suddenly everything's weird and in color. It was that striking, and I believe that it was set up just like an abduction or a visitation would be. They do set and setting, very dramatic. Well, the closer I got to this thing, and it was just hanging there, it wasn't changing. Uh, I again, you know, kept thinking I need to get to work. You know, it's an ugly UFO if it's a UFO at all. And but I did a shoulder check right when I was across from it, and this is like 35 feet away. It's still about maybe 35 feet in the air. And the weirdest thing happened. It suddenly seemed 10 times the size that it did when I first saw it. And it looks like it's a mile away. But yet it looks like it's right there. And now I'm really confused. You know, it's like, well, can you have an acid flashback? It's been 40 years since I did, you know, no, that's not. There was nothing, I mean, nothing to blame it on. And I don't have mental breaks, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
So, but I just pushed down on the gas pedal. I'm getting the hell out of there. I spoke with a astrophysicist recently, and he said, you know, I think that vehicle was leaving when you looked at it. You just explained gravatic lensing it perfectly. That this object probably had a gravity well in front of it, like mass, mini black hole harnessed or something like that. And it goes into that gravity well, and that's how they travel, and they can do super luminal speeds this way. And he said the way that it looked like it was right there and yet was way in the distance, that is what you were seeing. It was doing that. You know? It's like,
Interesting.
oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was my sighting, and I do not have a photo. I didn't even put in a MUFON report, Ryan, because I
I
was
was
so
gonna ask that.
embarrassed
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. I mean, could you imagine this? You know, this at that time I was chief investigator. Chief investigator didn't take photo, didn't take video, pushed down on the gas pedal to get the hell away from this object. You know, well, let's give him an award.
No, but Earl, you know, I have a chapter in my first book that features Chase Kletzky, the
Oh yeah,
former MUFON
Chase, great. Yeah.
investigator. And you know, she was part of an extremely dramatic close encounter case in a field, a
It was a
cornfield.
being, right? I
Um
remember
a
that case.
being,
Yeah.
triangular craft, everything, you know, and
Wow.
she became a part of her own investigation. And
Hmm.
you can't be faulted as MUFON investigators when you ultimately become a part of a case yourself.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Hmm.
I don't judge anyone on how they react. You know, Neil deGrasse always says, if you were abducted, why aren't you taking video on the craft? Or why didn't you get, a
Grab something.
photo?
Michio Kaku
Yeah,
says that. Grab something, you know?
grab something and bring it back. And we're like, Betty Hill tried and it
She did
disappeared.
try. Yeah. The book.
So, I don't fault anyone. You
Yeah.
can't know how you're going to react until it happens to you.
And now
So,
I have
I don't fault you.
so much more, you know, I understand now why somebody doesn't have a photo or a video.
Right.
I get it. I get it. And that's no longer something I'll hold against somebody. At one time it was.
Mhm.
But this thing is not just nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Now, MUFON doesn't like the word paranormal, right? We're not supposed to use, oh, this was paranormal, that was paranormal. It was a ghost. It was a
Yeah.
Bigfoot. But there's a way to, what I usually tell people is, it's not para anything. You just need to expand your ideas of what normal is. I mean, normal is not Newtonian physics. That's been out of vogue for over 300 years now. Is
Mhm.
1600s, and stuff. That's the way that people were looking at things, and it works. On a daily basis. You drop a hammer on your foot, you're going to yell, and it hurts. Gravity, etc. But we know that the universe is much stranger, and it's an interactive universe that we live in, with things like spooky action at a distance and quantum entanglement. Um,
Mhm.
it is a magical universe, and like Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's what the best cases are like. They seem to have a note intentionally absurd in there. Maybe they're Monty Python fans. I don't know. But, you think of some of the great cases like aliens cooking pancakes,
Yeah.
for the witness.
Yep.
Or the Hopkins, the Hopkinsville, the Kelly Hopkinsville entities, which
Yep.
Steven Spielberg loved so much. He made the movie Gremlins and based the little entities off of them. But they really existed,
Yeah.
and that's the magic that comes into this world through this phenomenon. And
Absolutely.
so you can't, somebody tells you a crazy story, you have to take it seriously. You have to take it
Yeah.
seriously.
You have to. I
Hmm.
agree. Well, we're coming up on the hour, Earl, but I do want to let our live audience know, guys, if you have any questions for Earl, go ahead and put them in the chat right now, and Suzanne will get those into our question bank, and we will get to those at the end of our discussion. I have a few more questions, Earl, if you don't mind, before we get to those listener questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
No
Um,
problem.
let's talk
Yeah.
about the MUFON Symposium that just took place. I know you were a part of this. There
Ah,
were some really interesting things shared at the event, which we'll talk about. But what was your personal involvement at the recent MUFON Symposium?
that's so
Where
much fun.
was it? Who was
That's so
there?
much
Yeah,
fun.
tell us a little about the event.
Sure. It was in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, Irving, Texas, technically, and we had some of the greatest speakers in phenomenology on that main stage, beginning with Robert Salas, who is a commander of an ICBM base that was shut down, the missiles one by a UFO that had done an incursion on that base. Same thing happened, the next state over at Minot Air Force Base, to David Schindel, where there was an incursion of a UFO that shut down all of their ICBMs. Um, Robert gave the keynote lecture. It was wonderful. Uh, in fact, Marilyn, his wife, said that was the best lecture I've ever heard my husband deliver, which is pretty impressive. Um, and we had people like, oh, we oh gee, I hate it when a name is on the tip of my cerebral cortex. We had Roger Stankovic from Australia, who is a scientist, and he talked about the Havana syndrome, and that people that have a close encounter with a UFO or meet beings are sometimes left with symptoms that are very similar to the Havana syndrome. And he
Oh,
went into the neurology behind it. It was just Dr. Medich, my dear friend and the leader of MUFON ZRT. Uh, he and I were sitting next to each other, me being the retired nurse and himself being the retired orthopedic surgeon. Um, the detail that Roger Stakovic gave us was just wow, amazing. It could have been in the American Medical Journal easily. It was that
mm,
detailed and that compelling in his evidence. We had people, let's see. My, I'll toot my own horn. I had the joy, pleasure, and honor of doing a 3.5 hour event that we called UFOs The Next Generation. We began with, I gave a little preamble talking about my mom's story. And then each one of these guests, we had Chanel Shands, who's Kenneth Arnold's granddaughter. And she talked about her grandfather, who kind of left his legacy with her as the person to share it in the future. And that's what she does. She's doing due diligence for her grandfather. He wrote the very first UFO book called The Coming of the Saucers. And his sighting back in 1947, in June 1947, at Mount Rainier was the first time that we heard the expression flying saucer. Ironically, they were not saucer shaped, they were crescent shaped. But he said that they skipped, like if you threw a saucer, skipped a saucer on a body of water, was the way that they flew, a formation of 9 craft. So we had Chanel give her grandfather's story. I had Geraldine Stith give the story of her father, who was the main witness in the Kelly Hopkinsville Gremlin Goblin case, which I love. There was a UFO sighting, a UFO landing, and an incursion on the family's property with these little kind of cute entities, but, had little talon-like hands. They came up with their hands raised, like the universal sign of we're unarmed, we come in peace. What do the boys do? They're like shooting at them, The funny thing is when you'd hit them, they'd spin around like one of the little foosball, game ball players, They'd spin around, gently float to the ground and run away and then come back. One was on the roof and was like feeling his hair. What's a strange protuberance on these humans' heads? What is that? It's curiosity. I love this. Geraldine said that her grandmother didn't want them to shoot at them. She wanted to invite them inside for coffee and read Bible scriptures to them. She wanted to invite them to church. I love her grandmother. I want a time machine so I can go back and just hug her,
Yeah, that's so sweet. It's like the opposite of a Jehovah's Witness. It's like they're not the ones to tell you about God. You come in and we'll tell you about God.
Oh my God. Isn't that great? And then we had Daniel Allen Jones come up. And he was Jim Marr's protege. He was writing a book about the Aurora, Texas UFO crash that happened in 1987 or 1897. Sorry,
there we go.
1897. Big difference. And he was wonderful. He talked about it, how it might have been a hoax, it might have not been a hoax, how they exhumed, tried to exhume the grave, but the government beat us to it, apparently. How they filled in the well that apparently they'd put the crash materials down into. Just a wonderful, just professional PowerPoint presentation. I just let him go, right? He did his 45 minutes. I brought up Chanel and we did a question answer thing. I just kind of interviewed her and that was the way she works best. Geraldine, I let her go. You get her behind a podium and she's just so sweet and so dear and so honest. And you love her, you hear her talking, you fall in love with Geraldine Stith. She's just wonderful, Southern belle. And she, and we had wonderful depictions of the little entities. So I was like putting up photos of people's artwork and newspaper articles of her dad, showing off the shotgun he was shooting at them with. And then at the end, we had a round table with 4 easy chairs, 4 microphones, and coffee if you wanted it. We didn't have the goblins to offer the coffee to, but and it was just this delightful, wonderful. We talked, kind of about all this stuff, what if grandma got her way? What would have happened? Would they have gone to church with grandma? Right. And how would the church have reacted? Would they have thought they were devils or, It was delightful. And I think probably the high point of my whole career Sold out event. I think there were about 200 people in there, and 3.5 hours. I was a little worried. That's longer than freaking Lord of the Rings, But everybody, their stories were so compelling, and they were all so lovable and engageable that it was a success. And I've heard all good stuff about it. It's
Awesome,
wonderful.
man.
The
Well,
other thing I got to help
Oh, yeah,
host
yeah,
was
please.
an ERT, Best of the ERT, which
Oh, right.
focused on experiencer cases. Now, this was a first for MUFON. They're kind of known for being sort of lean towards the nuts and bolts. Dr. Medich, Wendy Jaglowski, a bunch of us, we went up there and we shared 5 of the very best experiencer cases that we have ever gotten. And it was impressive, and people loved it. And we're going to do it again next year. So apparently it was a
Okay.
success.
Good,
So
good.
that's a symposium for me.
That's awesome, man. Well, I did want to ask. I know you can't talk too much about this, but there was also the story from Bob Spearing with the UFO material that was
Yes.
tested. Again, I know you weren't personally involved in that case. But what was the reaction at the event with that whole thing? I know it's
Very
on an
good.
ongoing
It is
investigation. These were
ongoing.
materials that were given to
They
MUFON
came
that
from
might be
Russia.
anomalous from Russia. So yeah,
From
can you give
Russia.
us kind of your Cliff Note
Sure.
version of that whole thing and where we're at with that, if you
Sure.
have any
Ron
updates?
James Bob Spearing, forgive me if I get anything wrong. It's their case, But
Yes,
apparently
forgive me.
there's an experiencer from Russia, and I guess he has a scientific background. He was a respected person, and the entities left him with these materials that just, I guess the word is apported, is Renario Hernandez's term for it. They apported next to him, and there were these little pieces of metal that were very, very high tensile strength, but yet showed anomalous qualities. Some think that perhaps it was Roswell crash material or something similar. The lab tests showed materials that were not on the periodic table, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Just did not, they were not there on the periodic table. So it is an exotic material of some kind. It's ultralight. Ron James had a picture that he showed with a flower petal holding this piece of metal up. And yet this stuff has the tensile strength of titanium, apparently.
Hmm.
So that was one of the, that was, they had a few pieces of this, and they shared that story. There was a strange thing that happened. They used the postal service, which they'll never do again, to send some of these materials back to Bob Spearing. And he lives in a gated community. He knows the person that runs the post office there. He trusts her. He's known her for years. Apparently, these materials, when they came, she saw the box. She put them in his P.O. box. And the next morning, the video cameras had been turned towards the wall intentionally. Never found them like that before. So you couldn't see what was going on. And that box was missing. It was
Whoa.
missing.
Wow.
Thankfully, that wasn't the sum total of anomalous metals. The other half is at the lab, which we will not ever tell anybody the location of our lab, but we do have a full-on scientific lab that is very, very good at what they do. So that's the story that I know of.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm forgetting certain aspects.
No, stay tuned, guys. I'm sure we will learn more about the flower petal metal, as I'm going to call it, moving forward. That's awesome, Earl. I'm so happy the event was a big success for you guys. I want to move to a couple of listener questions as we
Sure.
begin to sort of wrap things up here. Our first one, Earl, comes from our Patreon subscribers. They get priority to ask our guests questions, and this was a good one. The Tree of Life. I love that handle. The Tree of Life on Patreon asks Earl, what do you think about the possibility that the experiencer phenomena is separate from the nuts and bolts aspect? Is it possible that the experiencer phenomena has been shape-shifting throughout time?
Ah,
Angels, fairies, and mysterious nuts and bolts craft are simply the latest meme it's manifesting through. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack, but what do you think?
well, I'm a Jock Valet fan too, Mr. Tree of Life or Ms. Tree of Life. Um, and yes, I mean, one of my favorite books in the world is Passport to Magonia. And that's Jock Valet's, you know, hypothesis that this is an old phenomenon, that there's a puppet master that we're not even sure who that would be, and has all these different aspects to itself and presents itself in a way, in a context that is more acceptable to every generation. So the 1800s, they would appear as the great airships that look like they came out of a Jules Verne novel, you know. And then 1950s, 1940s, you're seeing the nuts and bolts science fiction coming out, Robert Heinlein and all that good stuff. And so they're taking on that kind of a form to maybe not scare us so much as they could. In other words, this is technologies that are similar to yours. You know, you're building rockets now and starting to play around with, you know, Redstone program and all this. And we're not that far ahead of you. You don't have to be that afraid of us. You can recognize this as metallic, you know. And now, of course, it's more this ethereal kind of, you know, the tic tac and all this stuff, you know, showing off, really. You know, going Mach 18 without creating a sonic boom, and reading the pilot's minds about where their cap point is. Yeah, you know, and I will tell you, I will call a UFO an unknown because I do not know what that is and I do not know where that came from. It may have come from another dimension. It might have come from the stars. There might be another civilization living right here on Earth under the ocean that we were not aware of, that evolved alongside of us. We don't know. And that's why it's called an unknown. I'm not going to say that that was a starship. I'm not going to say it was a time machine, and I'm not going to say that it wasn't a starship and that it wasn't a time machine. It could be all the above. So yeah, you bring up a valid point, and I love Jacques Vallée. So you know you can quote him all day, and I'm going to be perfectly happy.
Same, man. And
So there
I'm
you go.
sure Jacques would agree. In multiple choice questions, always choose D, all the above.
Yes,
If I've
me
learned
too.
anything.
All
Yeah.
inclusion, yes.
Yes,
Inclusiveness is good. Disclusion and dogma is the end of all creative thought. And so, you know, I try to avoid dogma like the plague.
absolutely. I could not agree more, my friend. Let's move to some of our listener questions that we got live right here for
Sure.
you. We have a lot. So we'll see, guys. I might not be able to get to all of them. What we don't answer here
Full
today
time
live,
and space, and we'll have longer, right?
exactly.
You know,
Then
just
we'll get them. I will send
TARDIS.
these. Yeah, we got to get timey wimey. We got to get it. I love Doctor Who, by the way, Earl. We could probably do a whole episode on Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah. Heck, I've read everything by him
Oh,
and then some.
I love it. Yeah, so if we don't get to everything, guys, I'll put them in the comments section and we'll have Earl answer them that way
Sure. I
down
can
the
do
line
that.
as well.
It's on
But
YouTube. Like
yep,
I can,
yep,
okay, I can go
right
on there
here.
and do that. Sure, you guys.
That's great. But we'll try to fire through these. Let's see how it goes. Our first one comes from Tad, and he asks Earl, what are the key differences between close encounters as reported to you and those portrayed in popular culture movies? Yeah, that's a good one. Like, I'm sure not everything is
That
a
is a good
flying
one.
saucer or, what we
Mhm.
see in the movies. Yeah, what do you make of
No,
that?
no, it's not. We get flying saucers, but we get flying bricks, and we get little tiny UFOs, and I think that the movies are kind of 50 years behind what we know. Films like Nope and stuff are fun, and I it's, I mean, heck, I love a good alien invasion, evil alien movie, but it's not really like that. It seems to be more one-on-one and personal and targeted for certain individuals. People that have close encounters with craft and beings, oftentimes they'll have certain blood types. It's generational. There's oftentimes a military background in the family. One wonderful case I had here, it turned out that the father worked with Project Blue Book while he was in the Air Force, and the family was targeted. They were taken, and the house was hovered over by 2 fireball UFOs that the father wound up seeing. It was a weird, ongoing 3-day experience that this family had. And it's not like the movies. They were targeted individually, I think. There's, and whatever the reason is, I don't know. I know that our visitors are it seems like that they do not like our nuclear problem. The military use of it, even using nuclear, power. It's poison, and it seems to be a concern that comes up, and you don't really see that in movies. Experiencers are left with 3 distinct messages. Whatever their background is, it doesn't matter. Number 1, nuclear weapons are evil. Stop building them. Number 2, stop trashing your world. The world is not replaceable. It's not a resource for you to use up and then go to Mars and do the same thing there. Take care of your Mother Earth. And number 3, better yourselves. Raise your vibration, live on a higher frequency than you are, because you're acting like a horde of barbarians, and yet, here you are, almost space-worthy. So those are the 3 things that people are told over and over and over and over, case by case by case. You don't see that in the movies.
Get the message, guys. Get the
all
message. Right. I love it. I love it, Earl. Polly's one of our regulars here. She asks, did your mom talk about any implants during her experience?
Nope.
No.
I don't know if she had one or didn't have one, or, she had an experience when she was 16 years old with an intelligent fireball before she worked for Hughes or anybody. This thing interacted with her and her sister. It came into their screened-in porch, hovered over her sleeping sister, and went over to my mom. It was eyeball to eyeball, distance. Went back through the screen, buzzed like a hive of hornets, is what she said. And it waited for her in the neighbor's adjoining cornfield. My mom ran out to the cornfield, 16 years of age, and stood there looking up at this thing. And she said it popped like a soap bubble, and it smelled like an electric train transformer, ozone. Whoa. But that's how she said it smells like your electric train when it popped, Earl. So she had contact. I don't know about her family, if my grandfather or grandmother, if it went back, but I would suspect possibly. This thing seems to track certain bloodlines, certain families. But as far as an implant, she never mentioned it, and I have no reason to think that she had one or didn't.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's fair. All right, next one. Riney asks, does MUFON have access to radar or just the military?
I see that. Radar, or does MUFON have access to radar or just the military? We sometimes get reports with radar results in them if the person was a military member, but we don't have a MADAR unit. We do have a radar unit, but we do have MADAR units. And we do have a program where you can get a MADAR unit and it will catch an electromagnetic anomaly. And what we'll look for is a hit on the MADAR circuit. And we have them in California from San Diego all the way up to the border of Northern California. Oftentimes, you'll have a sighting of a UFO, and lo and behold, the same coordinates, you'll have a MADAR hit. And so that's what we have. And it's quite effective, actually. It's just another level of evidence to prove something happened.
Right, exactly. Add it to the data, for sure. Here's our next one. Random Content asks, Earl, your thoughts on metallic sphere UFOs. What comes to mind for me is like the Vet sphere that Hynek
Yeah.
investigated, but also
Yes.
these metal spheres in the Middle East. That Arrow
Yeah.
was looking
That's a
at as well.
thing.
What do you make of
It
these?
is
Do
a
you get those reports?
thing. Well, we called them Foo Fighters back in the 1940s, so it's nothing new.
Hmm.
Officialdom keeps trying to say that, oh, this is some new phenomena we just noticed. And,
Yeah.
that's so much BS because we know that they've known about this for a long time. And yeah, Foo Fighters were these metallic discs that are not discs, but spheres that followed the planes. Now, my dad was on a B-17 over the European theater back in World War II, and he said that they saw them. For him, he thought that it was either a secret weapon of the Germans, a Wunderweapon, or perhaps it was some atmospheric phenomenon, because he was very uncomfortable with the subject of UFOs. I think he knew very well what my mom did, but his religious beliefs kind of made it, a no subject. So, but there you go. It is a real thing. I have a bunch of cases with metallic spheres, and I think they're sort of probes, or maybe it is like the TARDIS from Doctor Who. It could be that inside there's a whole crew, but it can appear as a little tiny ball.
Yep. Yeah. Get us
Who
those
knows?
warp bubbles. Yep.
Yeah.
Here we go. Paul asks
Ooh,
Earl's
love it.
hypothesis: ETH, crypto, tempestrial, or a combination of other NHI. Thank you, gents. Yeah, what are these intelligences? What are your thoughts?
All the above. I love it.
Tea,
All the above.
juicy.
Yes. No, there are cryptids, and there, if you look on my shelf, I've got like my sea monster. I think there's a Bigfoot somewhere out over there. Yeah. So it is a phenomenon, and I don't know that it's something separate from our favorite phenomena. It may just be another aspect of it. What we look for is, okay, somebody reports a Bigfoot. Was he next to a UFO? If he wasn't, well, MUFON isn't so interested, probably as they should be, in that. But, we are a UFO investigatory group, so I understand the point there. But was it next to a UFO? There are cases of a Bigfoot getting in and out of a UFO. Maybe like Chewie in Star Wars. Maybe he's the pilot.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely. Chewbacca, my favorite. My favorite. Ooh, this is a good one. Very current. Polly asks, what do you think we will get from Elizondo's upcoming book and Spielberg's new movie? Yeah, he's doing an original UFO movie.
I know.
In the near future.
He hasn't contacted me, darn it. I don't think he's contacted the Hynek brothers yet. Or maybe they just can't tell me. But
still time. There's still time.
I'm looking forward to both.
Yeah.
Lou Elizondo, he gets a lot of blowback out there. I don't even visit X anymore, Twitter, whatever. I'll peek in there, but it's sort of like a snake pit. And everybody hates each other, and they're just dogmatic. It's got to be this way, and it's all about politics too. It's like, God, get out of here. But I hope that both are good. I will read Lou's book when it comes out. Lou has worked with MUFON before. I mean, there are stories of him coming out to the headquarters when it was here in Irvine, California. My assistant state director, Linda, gave him a little box of implants that he was wanting for their group to study. And so we did at least loan him a few, like a little matchbox filled with implants. So there you go.
Interesting. Okay.
Spielberg, I love Spielberg, so I'm sure he's going to do a beautiful film. Can't wait.
I can't wait either, man. Awesome, guys. Well, that's going to be it for our listener questions here. But if you have any more, put them in the comments section of the YouTube video here, and Earl will get to them when he can. This last thing
I'll go do that.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Random content. Thank you for the super chat. Follow up on the spheres. Thoughts on Patrick Jackson? Do you know that name, Earl? I'm not familiar.
I don't know who that is, actually.
Okay,
I'm
I
sorry.
don't either. Yeah, sorry, random content.
I don't
but
know everything. There's a lot of people in this field. I can't keep up with everybody. I try, but good luck.
Sorry, my mic went out again there.
I can't
Earl.
hear you.
I did
Oh,
hear you.
man. Yeah.
Oh, hear me now? Somewhat.
What was that? You're breaking up right at the end. I'm glad it didn't happen through the whole program. Thank God. The CIA finally, they're tapping us now. I can't hear you, Ryan.
There we go. Am I back?
There. Yeah, kind of half and half.
Half and half.
So what were you going to ask there?
I don't even know. I feel like the Men in Black are trying to get to us, Earl. So why don't we?
Yeah.
They always seem to do it, man. Why don't we close things up here? I have one more question that I really want to ask you.
Sure.
So, a lot has happened since 2017. It seems like the whole landscape of the UFO conversation has changed. UFOs have gone mainstream. It's crazy. I never thought I would see this day. And now we are in 2024. We have a new Pentagon UFO program. We've had congressional UFO hearings. We have groups popping up left and right all over the place having to do with UFOs. They're being taught at our universities now. And I never thought I'd see the day, Earl. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So my last question for you is, where do you see UFOs going as we move forward? Where do you think we are now? And what do you think has to be done moving forward with this topic?
Well, I think that if they wanted to disclose the UFOs, the aliens could do it right now. I mean, they could park a giant city-sized UFO over, every major city in the world if they wanted to. But they don't. So I think that disclosure, as much as we want that, I don't know if we're ever going to get that moment where the president stands up at the podium and says, guess what, fellow Americans, we are not alone. We have made contact with other intelligences. I don't know. I thought maybe something had changed and maybe we would get that. But at the end of the Arrow program, again, they rolled it up just like he did Project Blue Book. It was like Project Blue Book Mac 2. But I do believe that we ourselves are disclosure. I think that if you go in there and if you study this thing and you get your hands dirty, that you get into the muck of ufology, that you can find these things out for yourself. And that's why I would, encourage people to, join MUFON or, become a MUFON field investigator or do this on your own if that's the way, if you don't work well with others, so to speak. But you can go and you can do this yourself and you can be your own disclosure, your own instrument of disclosure. And I can't stress how important I believe that is, because everybody's got an opinion and everybody can't be right, and I think we all hold a little piece of that puzzle. And if we're all being honest and we're all doing this together, we can learn something and we can go farther in this field. Also, I think that something is being required of humanity. They want us to stop killing each other with nukes and building them and threatening them. And it's like we build these weapons of mass destruction and point them at ourselves. And I think that we need to get past that warrior barbarian thing before we're space worthy. We want Star Wars and they want Star Trek. That's the difference. We want to go out and exploit the solar system and go to the asteroid Ceres because it's made out of gold. And, we're thinking in such basic terms that go back thousands and thousands of years with us. And I think there needs to be that jump start happen. The oh, what do they call that? You know, I mean, we're at a point now where humanity is about to change. I think with that AI is it's inevitable that eventually it's going to be part of us. You know, I mean, we already have artificial hips, artificial knees. I could talk about those. You know, we're already turning ourselves into cyborgs, and maybe that is what the answer is becoming one with the AI, or maybe that will be the destruction of us. I don't know, but you know, hands on yourself and be honest. Don't have, you know, some people they'll look for what they want to find in ufology, and if they don't find it in a particular case, they'll close it as a hoax or what have you. You have to be open-minded and willing to have your mind changed about things. I think that that's very, very important. This phenomena is probably different from what any of us think it is. And the only way that we're going to learn what it is to be thoroughly honest and accept our results that we get.
Ah, wise words, my friend. I can't think of a better way to wrap this up, Earl. Last question, of course, before I let you go.
You got a few of
Where
those.
Yeah, I know.
Here's
A
another
few.
one.
Where can we find everything you're up to, my man? And yeah, do you have anything else coming
Yeah.
up that you want to tell us about? And yeah, give us all the socials and
I'm going to
all that.
disappear during August and really focus on finishing my book. You know, I have a book called The Gray Files that I've been working on for, 5 years now, and it's in pieces, and I got to coalesce it into something that's enjoyable and accurate. So that's the what's right up ahead. But if you want to, if you'd like to talk, or I am on social media. On Facebook, I'm just Earl Grey. I'm at that 5,000 friend limit, but I've have it set so that it's a creators page, and you can follow me, and I will interact with you. You can post on my page, no matter who you are. Just be fair and be kind, and don't be political, and don't be a jerk. Okay. Or, if you really want to get a hold of me, you can always find me at Earl Grey Anderson, Grey SON for Anderson, Earl Grey Anderson, like one word, at gmail.com. Look, I'm doxing myself, Ryan. but that is a way to get a hold of me, and I do answer my emails. Thank you. Thank you very much. Suzanne posted my link on Facebook.
She's on it.
I'm on LinkedIn as well as Earl Grey Anderson, and I answer people's questions there. That's the way to find me. Or go to SoCalMUFON.com. I'm very proud of our local MUFON page. We have some videos on there, like I've got Paul Hynek on a video that he did when he spoke to our group. I've got Craig Campobosa, I think, has a video up there. I've got a produced video that Jeremy Norrie did for me, independent film producer, called MUFON and UFOs. You can watch that for free if you click on the top button that I have a YouTube link to. It's just SoCalMUFON.com, SoCal MUFON.
Perfect. I can't wait to go look at all that stuff, man. And we'll have to have you on again to talk music. I know that's a whole other part of your
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely make that.
You see all my Beatles. I got my Yellow Submarine back there.
Yep, I did see that.
See it. It's on the. it's behind a haunted mansion. Ghosts. The ghosts. Yeah. Anyway, hitchhikers.
I love it. I love it, man. Yeah, we'll have to talk about John Lennon's UFO sighting next time we have you.
He had, and Chris Squire from Yes had a close encounter with a UFO, and he was a friend. He told me the story at 2 a.m. about this saucer that hovered over him while he was taking a pee on a rock in Britain. Okay, middle of nowhere. It's a wonderful story. Mike Fiorito, he has a book that's coming out soon, a UFO book. That's more of a straight ahead UFO book than For All We Know, which is this beautiful, magical, realist novel that he wrote. But I did write one of the forewords in that book. Like Josh Cutchin wrote the first one, and I wrote the second one, and I tell Chris Squire's story in there. So if you get Mike's new book when it comes out,
Ooh, we'll get a link for that as well, my friend. Earl,
yeah,
Earl, I have to thank you, man, for coming on. It's been far too long. I know we could talk for hours, but we will have you back on
yeah,
soon, my friend. So,
we could.
thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much for
Ryan.
coming on Somewhere in the Skies today. I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
All right, guys, that's going to do it
Somewhere
for
in the
this week's
skies,
episode.
folks. We got-
And oh, look at that. He's got the t-shirt. So I guess I'll just say, go visit our
There it
merch
is.
shop, guys. We got a bunch of designs in the merch shop. But I will I'll see us out here and we'll talk off air a little bit here, Earl. So I want to thank everyone for watching us live tonight. We're going to be doing this again tomorrow at 11 a.m. That would be 11 a.m. UK time. So I know it's going to be very early for you East Coasters and West Coasters, but we have an Australian guest, Grant Levac, will be joining us. There we go. Look at that little guy there. Grant Levac from Australia will be joining us tomorrow morning as well, guys. So be on the lookout for that. And that's going to do it. So, as always, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. Thank you so much, Earl. Thank you, guys, and have a great night.